Folks, welcome to another episode of the Soul Sessions. I am your host, Soul, of course, but with me today, the last true Cockney and East End Brawler, Beau. Bells, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Well, absolute pleasure. But obviously, what I do with every guest, every guest has a story and every story has a beginning. How did your story begin as a wrestling fan?
So I'm quite a classic wrestling fan, like watched it with family growing up. My nan was really into it. We used to watch it on a Saturday. I always remember it being on in like the background with her. And then when I was growing up in the 90s, obviously the Attitude Era was like first front, it was everywhere basically. I feel like, in that kind of period, you couldn't get away from wrestling. So I grew up watching it then, kind of watched it in my late teens, early 20s. I feel like always kind of had it on in the background, even when I wasn't watching it like weekly, like WWE kind of stuff. Always kind of watched a WrestleMania here and there. I watched a Royal Rumble. And then I think it was 2014, maybe. I got back into it like a lot. Started watching a lot more independent British wrestling as well. Found out about a lot of promotions that were like, down the road from where I lived and was like, oh my God, there's so much wrestling. Because I think when I was younger, it was kind of like WWE. And there used to be, I remember at school, like boys would have like tapes of like ECW and stuff. And I'd be like, can I have it? And they'd be like, no, you're a girl, you cannot look at the sacred text, So yeah, it was only once I got a bit older and found out more about independent kind of wrestling that I started watching more of it. So yeah, it was kind of went from there. And then 2018, I started training. I discovered Pro Wrestling Eve before that. Went to a few of their shows and was like, oh my God, I didn't know wrestling could be like this empowering, especially for women. And then they opened their school in 2018. So I was like, let me give it a try. I'm a really not very healthy 30-year-old. Let's see what happens. And I went and fell in love with it after the first session. But it was like, yeah, I think all roads lead to wrestling for a lot of wrestlers. So yeah, it took a bit of time to get there, but it was always something I loved, and I always loved the performance side of it. And was like, I could give that a go. And yeah, I had my first session and was like, yep, this is it. This is the thing I found.
They loved it as well. And those old ECW sacred texts on Betamax as well, like, kind of keep them protected. They're the sacred.
Yeah, the boys would not let me. They were always like, no, you're a girl. You can't like wrestling. And I'd be like, I'd be watching WWE. I'd be watching Raw and SmackDown, Sunday Night Heat, watching all the pay-per-views and coming in and chatting to them about it. But just the WCW, like ECW specifically, I remember that was almost like revered. And then when I got older and watched it, I was like, oh my God, I can watch it myself. Like it was always really funny. But yeah, there was a very kind of almost a clear divide, was like, no, you go, you watch this, go over there, not this. Could have just been my school, could have been the stupid boys that I grew up with, but that's how it was.
Well, hey, look, you're the wrestler now, so you did the achieving dream. They just
exactly, yeah.
But obviously, I got into wrestling in 2019 as a fan, and obviously I'm a late period, and I was like go back and learning, and I especially like learning about the Attitude Era, because I've had so many people say, oh, it's the best, it was the prime, it was so many great things. And obviously you have like the big stars there with Rock and Austin and Triple H doing their thing, but I feel like there were maybe some underrated, as they say, mid-carders or storylines as well. I want to know for yourself, but as a fan of that era, what do you think were some underrated wrestlers from that time?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you say, The Rock, Stone Cold were like, oh my God, faves. But now as a wrestler, like watching it back, people like, what was it? Dean Malenko and Perry Saturn, people like that I didn't really invest that much time in when I was younger, because I was a massive Hardy Boys and Lita fan. Like, obviously I was. I'm covered in tattoos. I've got silly colored hair. So that was where, like, I always loved the kind of high flying lucha style when I was younger. Now actually being a wrestler, that was really scary to me when I first started wrestling. So when I started watching wrestling back and going over some of the kind of Attitude Era stuff, they were the ones that kind of stuck out to me. I was like, oh my God, they're really good wrestlers. At the time, as a 14-year-old, I wanted to see Jeff Hardy do a flip, and I still love Jeff Hardy to this day. But, when I look back, they were probably the massive ones that stuck out to me. People like Al Snow as well. I loved Al Snow. I know he was obviously like really popular because he had, head as a gimmick, which I always loved as well. I love a really gimmicky character wrestler as well. So he always was like, I watched it back and was like, oh, yeah, there were some actually like amazing wrestlers. But yeah, I think for women as well, like watching it back and watching, you know, Jazz and Ivory and stuff, like, you know, I loved them at the time. They were obviously Jazz, like, terrified me when I was younger. But when you go back and watch it now, like, obviously, like I said, I loved Lita. Like, she was the kind of rebel for me, you know, when she started wrestling men, and I was like, oh my God, that can happen. That was really cool. But yeah, going back and watching that era and watching people like Ivory and Jazz, I was like, oh shit, they're, you know, not that the Lita wasn't the real deal, they're just that style of wrestling. It's what I really gravitate towards as a wrestler now. Like when I started wrestling, I was like, I'm going to be like Lita and the Hardy Boys, I'm going to be a high flyer. And then I got in a wrestling ring and I was like, absolutely not. That's terrifying, it's scary, it's really hard. I think that you have to have like a certain mentality to be able to do a flippy boy stuff, and I don't have it. I barely leave the floor if I can help it. So when I watch back and I go back and watch wrestlers who were more kind of brawlers or like technical wrestlers, I've got a lot more of appreciation for it now as a kind of wrestler and as an adult than I did when I was first watching it.
Fair dues indeed. And also you mentioned the Hardys there, and I feel like the Hardys especially, and Lita as well, so influential in like this modern generation of wrestlers just from their connectivity with, you know, the crowd. Why is it, what do you think, like the Hardys and Lita had that powerful connection with the fans?
Yeah, it's hard to like, because obviously for me as a kind of younger person growing up, I connected with them immediately because I was a little grunger, like I was alternative, you know, that was my connection straight away. I was like, I looked at them and I was like, I want to look like that, I want to be that. But I also think for all of them, actually, there was like a vulnerability to them and a relatability in the struggle that they had. I think if you go back and watch some of their storylines, you know, they were always the underdogs. They were always kind of the smaller people, even though they're like 6 foot. You know, they were always smaller, littler, kind of that plucky, you know, underdog style. And I think that's what a lot of people related to. Just from, you know, being in wrestling now, I still think that's something people gravitate towards. You know, you look at people who are kind of like, you know, really, you know, carved out iron. They're really like, oh, like top level incredible wrestlers. Not that they don't have a vulnerability if they want to show that in their character, but I think that people can relate less to it. There's a difference between that kind of superstar energy and being a superstar but also being relatable. I don't know, it's a weird thing to try and explain and talk about because it's something that I kind of try and work towards and kind of found myself wrestling in, especially in the tag team that I'm in. I'm wearing my own merch because I'm lame. But that's something that people always say that we have as well as Fight and Flight, that we're very relatable. And I think there's just, I don't know, every wrestler connects with an audience in a different way. And I think there's a lot of me in my character. And I think that kind of pushes through with the audience. They like to see the authenticity to it, maybe that they see you, parts of you as a real person are in that character. And I think that was the case with the Hardy Boys and Lita. I think, you know, they weren't the overly characterized people. They were kind of themselves, just turned up a bit. And I think that's what can connect with people sometimes. You know, you get I love really outlandish characters as well. Like I love that. But I think, yeah, maybe that's what it was for them as well, that they were just kind of authentically them, and people caught onto that as well. And like I said, people love a plucky underdog, and they were like the ultimate plucky underdogs. So I think that kind of like does it as well.
Absolutely. And they really had that kind of connectivity with the audience that just, you know, why people have followed their career for so long. And I want to touch upon, before I touch upon the Hardys, Lita, because I know Lita would leave WWE and have like a segment with Crime Time that was a bit not the best to celebrate her career, what she's done for the company. But then she would come back for Rumbles and appearances, but then really came back, you know, sort of like the end of last year, and had the tag title run with Becky Lynch, and even had the Mania match, her, Trish, and Becky against Damage Control. Now, say if Lita was not to come back, from a fan's perspective, do you think that would be the perfect send-off for her career in WWE?
I think so. I think she deserved that WrestleMania moment. I think, you know, when I was younger and didn't really know what happened with Lita leaving WWE, and especially hearing about it kind of later and stuff, it was, you know, it was hard what she went through. And I think that giving her that WrestleMania moment, I think she'd be happy with it. I think if she watched, you know, knowing kind of her story and stuff, I think that's a nice kind of way to end it. Obviously, I would love her to wrestle again. And if she comes to independent, I would literally give my left arm to like even stand near her. But you know, I think that would be a really nice send off. It was like the passing of the torch, wasn't it? It was like, you know, because Becky Lynch and Bailey have said how influential Trish Stratus and Lita were on their careers. And I think having that, it's kind of the passing the torch, like this is the next generation of superstars that they've influenced. So I think that's a really nice circle kind of closed. If she wanted to leave it there, I think she could. She can still go, you know, so can Trish. I've been so impressed with how like well Trish has done as well, like recently. But you know, they can still go. So I think if they wanted to come back, I think they could. But I don't think she'd have any regrets if she left it how she did, to be honest. And I wouldn't as a fan either. I think, you know, getting her that WrestleMania moment, I think especially having the women's tag titles now and giving her a run with that as well, I think that's a massive part of it. Because obviously her being part of the Hardy Boys and kind of Team Extreme, I think, you know, if there was an opportunity for tag title kind of run into gender maybe, or, you know, women's tag team back then, she would have been in contention with it. She would have kind of been involved in that. So I think that's a nice little kind of, you know, she's kind of, again, full circle that she's been tag team champion as well, especially with someone who she was like a massive influence to. So it's really nice to kind of have that full circle and see that as a fan as well. Because, you know, being in wrestling now, I can imagine must be amazing for her to like, you know, work with all these people who she's influenced. Like, yeah, it must be wild.
Oh, absolutely as well. And getting to be a part of history, you know, you'll be ever remembered in the lineage of these women tag titles, and I think that's a very special thing to have her a part of as well. Obviously, going on to the Hardys, because they've done a lot in their time as wrestlers. You know, TNA, Ring of Honor, going back for Impact, then WWE return at Mania, now AEW as well. So many different versions of the Hardys as well. So I want you know, could you rank them for me, bro? Your favorite versions of the Hardys?
I mean, number one top Hardy Boys for me was WrestleMania 17. You know, that era. I can literally tell you exactly what Jeff Hardy was wearing because he was the biggest crush. He literally has like black mesh with like black little patent bits, and he's got red shaved like head. It's that you know, the image of him getting speared off the holds from Edge. I feel like 2000, I'm going to say 1999 to 2001, maybe 2002, probably my top tier Hardy Boys era. Probably because I was like mid to late teens and I had a massive crush on Jeff Hardy as well. But in my head, that's the kind of best era. And I think that was around, you know, when you had Edge and Christian and the Dudley Boys. And it was basically those three teams just went round, but they always were like new storylines with it as well. It wasn't just the same old, you know, they kind of had that kept expanding with the tables, ladders and chairs. Obviously they had like the tables and the ladders and the TLC, and they kind of were like, you know, made that explode in those kind of like matches. And then I remember when Edge and Christian were the conquistadors as well, when they had all the gold, and it was like trying to figure out who they were and all that kind of stupid Attitude Era stuff. So that's definitely top for me, because I think I look back very nostalgically of the Attitude Era. Probably if I watched a lot more of it now, I'd be like, ugh, some of this is, I mean, most of this is problematic, because it is. But that's specifically that for me. And then I think second would be when they did the first, you know, like a movie style match, when they did the first, like, you know, the Delete kind of era of Brother Nero, that kind of stuff. That's probably second for me, because they completely reinvented what their story was and who they, like, not who they were, but you know what I mean? Like, that was a complete, like, they went out there with that story as well. They did something that no one else was going to do, like, or did up until that point, that cinematic kind of style of wrestling match. Like, I remember watching that, like, what was it called? Was it Ultimate Deletion? Was it that?
Yes. Ultimate Deletion. Okay.
I remember watching that and I was just like, this is bonkers. Like, what is even happening? But it was so like compelling and weird that like people couldn't keep their eyes off it. And I think that was really, really, like, everyone was talking about that in wrestling. You know what I mean? Even though it was like years ago, I think people still reference that. And, you know, the Delete chant is still going now, isn't it? And also the use of what's it called? Vanguard.
Oh, Vanguard 1, yes.
Yeah, it's just so stupid. But I love wrestling when it's stupid. And it was. But it was also a really deep storyline about their brotherhood as well, which I really enjoyed. But yeah, I think that. I'm trying to think what else. I'm trying to think of a third. I feel like I should have a 3.
Maybe thinking of like, I mean, it's not necessarily Jeff, but Matt had like the Hardy family office when he was in AEW for the first time as well. I mean,
yeah, I really like that. If I like when I used to like going back and watching the stuff in WWE in the Attitude Era, like Jeff was always the quieter one, and Matt was always kind of the more, kind of when they did like back to the stage segments, it was him that kind of spoke more. And yeah, no, seeing how creative kind of Matt's been over the years as well is really cool. Like, I think maybe the 3 is kind of AEW. Obviously, they're not wrestling the kind of same way that they did, and I think they probably will see a real change in how they wrestle in the next couple of years, especially because that kind of style. Like I said to you, it's really hard. It's really hard on the body, as we know. They've had issues with that as well. So I hope they kind of can find a way to continue to wrestle and look after themselves, because I don't watching Jeff do a swanton onto someone and just fully onto them at the moment. I'm like, oh, you must hurt, they must hurt. But yeah, I think knowing how they've kind of changed over the years, thinking of when they like debuted and stuff, how different they were even 2 or 3 years later in WWE, I'm sure they'll kind of reinvent themselves again to adapt to what they can do. I think they're pretty good at that. So hopefully anyway, because like I said, they probably one of the reasons I got into wrestling as I, later on as well, and like actually going to try to be a wrestler. There was definitely a massive influence on me. So,
absolutely. I mean, I think the Hardys will go down as probably just one of the most influential teams of all time for what they've done for the business. But I want you to get your booking cap on right now. I want you to get your mind going right now. Let's say the Hardys, you have to book their final match in AEW. So I want you to think in your mind, which tag team in AEW would you like to be the final opponents of the Hardys?
Oh my God, that is like, I feel like tense even having to make that decision. I'm like, oh my God.
No pressure.
So I think just for the Goths, like House of Black, just because, the goth off, the grunger off for me, or the little grunger inside me, I feel like that would be a good match. And I feel like that whatever kind of team they had with that, they could bring out like a different style of wrestling for the Hardys as well. And also, you've got to have a token girl. So why would you, got even those odds out so they could bring back Lita? See? Makes sense. If this happens, you're welcome, AEW. But yeah, I think that could work. Obviously, I think a lot of people would say Young Bucks because they've been obviously massively influenced by the Hardys. But again, I think it's trying to get that different style out of them. And I think House of Black would do that. I think if it was the Young Bucks, it would have to be a spot fest. It would be, high flying. It would be flips. And don't get me wrong, still love that. But I feel like for their last match, I feel like we could end on a different note, maybe.
Oh, absolutely as well. I mean, the golf off, as you said. I mean, hey, Tony Candace bringing Lita, and that's what we get. You got to give a wee old copyright thing from Tony. Get that Jacksonville paycheck coming in there. But obviously, as well, history as well is a good thing as well. I mean, do you think we could see maybe a double retirement match, Edge and Christian versus the Hardys?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I did. Yeah. I mean, when I saw that Edge was back in AEW, immediately my brain was like, Hardy Boys, Edge and Christian. I think, do you know what? For them, that would probably be their ideal retirement match because they came up together. They grew up basically on TV together, doing, they how many years did they wrestle each other? They must have such a close bond as teams. You get really close to people in wrestling that you wrestle regularly. And that's only, I'm thinking of that as someone who's been in the business like nearly 2 years. And I think of the people that I wrestle regularly and I'm like, oh my God, yes, there's my besties. But, they must have such a bond. So yeah, that could be amazing. And I think because, Edge and Christian have done a good job of adapting the way they wrestle as well. I feel like that could be a really interesting match now as well. It wouldn't just be, obviously they'd have to hit some classics, but I feel like they try and like subvert some expectations maybe with that and give people something slightly different. So yeah, that could that's very exciting, actually.
As long as they don't do that spot of, you know, Adam Copeland spearing Hardy on the big thing for their final match. I mean, let's not go too crazy now. Let's say,
yeah. I feel like they both snap in half. I feel like they both just come down like,
oh shit, there we go.
Yeah.
Now, I want to talk about some of your opponents you faced, because you've actually faced someone who's become on the, you know, been on the show before. You faced Nightshade, and Nightshade's a very interesting individual. So I want to know, what's it like facing Nightshade?
I mean, she's very scary now, but she's amazing. Like, she is. So I wrestled her, I think it was like very early on, like maybe within my first 5 or 6 matches. So it was really early on. It was last year. And I wrestled her at Pro Wrestling East, and Pro Wrestling East has very quickly become my home promotion, even though it's in Cambridge, because they booked me on my debut, which was really cool, against Rhia O'Reilly. That's where Fight and Flight were born, with me and Skye O'Shure. So yeah, wrestling Nightshade was amazing. She has a lot of people say I have such a brain for wrestling, but she was just so easy to plan with. She was so helpful and supportive, and you know, I was still in very early stages, so I was terrified. But she made it like such a breeze. She was so easy to work with. And then we got in the ring, she kicked the crap out of me, and I was like, yes, love this. She's such an amazing talent. Like, she should be, I know she is like everywhere, but she should be everywhere. Like, she's amazing, and I would happily wrestle her any day, every day again. She was, I think, you know, sorry, kayfabe, but she was amazing to wrestle, and I love her to bits. She's just such a good human. And sorry, I've ruined your mystique, Nightshade, but sorry, people know now. But yeah, no, it was a really good experience. Like, that was in the lead up to Fight and Flight kind of forming, because there'd been a story where Skye had tagged with Nightshade, and she turned on them, and then I wrestled Nightshade. So it was kind of, that's what helped build that as well. And she was very good at that storytelling side of it as well. Like, when we were planning the match, I just learned loads off of her, because there was like bits and pieces where she'd be like, oh, well, I wouldn't do that. This is why, like this, and this. You know, she was really invested in telling the story that we had to tell. So yeah, it was such a good experience with her.
Great to see. And hopefully Nightshade's going to come and kick your ass now, because of what you said.
Yeah, she will. She kicked crap out of me. I was like, she's going to murder me. She did, but she will.
I'll take no blame. I'm just an innocent party. I'm not trying to instigate things here. But obviously, you mentioned Rhia O'Reilly there, who's someone like you quite faced a lot. Obviously, a wee bit of a Loki variant in herself. So I want to know, what's it like facing Rhia?
Rhea's actually, so Rhia was my first session that I ever went to. Rhia was there. Rhia, I wrestled her in my first match, my singles debut. Rhia is one of the kindest people you will ever meet in and outside of wrestling. She is 100% invested in wrestling being a better place, and she is a fantastic storyteller. She's an incredible human, and wrestling her was genuinely a privilege. Like, she's been wrestling for, I think, 13 years this year. And yeah, she's been around for a while, and she is, again, she's just one of those people that's really, really good at storytelling. So when we had my debut at Pro Wrestling East with her, she was like, we're going to do this and this, but everything's a teaching moment with Rhia. So she was like, I'm not going to plan this bit, because, you know, I want you to learn some stuff as we're doing it. But yeah, no, I've wrestled her a couple of times, and every time she's just been brilliant. She also kicked crap out of me, but she was, hopefully I get to wrestle her again, because I think, especially, I only started on shows last February, so I haven't been around that long, so I'm hoping I get a few more matches with her, just because I feel like I've got better since then. You know, when I had my debut and I watch it back, and it's actually not that bad. Like, I definitely forgot some stuff. We worked a little bit on the fly, and it was really nice, because I was like, she's made me more confident in, you know, being a wrestler. I mean, she's made me more confident in being a human being, because she's been such a big influence on me, and she's been so incredibly supportive of what I want to do in wrestling and how I want to wrestle. And, you know, especially someone getting into wrestling in their 30s, you know, you kind of put this pressure on yourself that you've got to do everything like straight away, or you know, you've got to wrestle the same way as someone who's 18 and just got into wrestling. You know, I know what my kind of vision is and what I want to do in wrestling thanks to her. Yeah, she's just been such a huge part of my wrestling journey, and I hope she continues to be that part. But she's also a fantastic bloody wrestler. So yeah, I've been very lucky to wrestle her a handful of times, and hopefully I'll get to wrestle her a handful more. So
who knows what can happen? I mean, there's plenty of variants out there, so you definitely got to squash.
I know, right? I don't know which one. You say that she's got her variants. I've got mine as well, so you might see some popping up.
We're going to see some kind of ultimate deletion shenanigans coming.
Yeah.
Now.
Oh my god, I would love that. I think that's right up my street. Definitely. I love like I said, I love being Beau Bells, but I also love playing other characters as well. And yeah, I feel like Rhia definitely loves the kind of, you know, story-driven, character-driven wrestling. And yeah, I feel like we could definitely get some wild antics with our variants going on.
Wow, pro wrestling East, give these two a budget. Come on, maybe 50,000, 100,000. Come on.
Mate, we've got deep pockets. We'll see what we can do in 2024.
Absolutely. Get that in theaters. It will beat the MCU and put them in the dirt, and you will have a new cinematic wrestling UK, whatever shenanigans universe is going on now. I mean, hey, I'll take it indeed. But obviously, you know, on the show, I've had the flight because I've had Skye O'Shure on. Now I've had the fight. So I want to know from your point of view, Beau, how did Fight or Flight, you know, form? You know, what's the story behind that? Because obviously Skye said their part. I'd love to hear your part.
Yeah, so we were in the same kind of training circles. So they used to go to the London School of Lucha Libre, and I used to go to Eve Academy, and sometimes the London School of Lucha Libre, when they were both training out of the Resistance Gallery in London. Rest in peace, no longer here, unfortunately. And then we both started training at Play Fight in London, which is Cara Noir's school, when it opened. Oh my god, 2021. So time doesn't mean anything anymore. So we started training together loads, and we got closer and closer, became friends, like actual real friends. I think sometimes think that the friendship thing is a gimmick, and it's actually not. We're actually friends. And I think that's why it's worked, because we are actually friends. It's not a falsity, like I said, about being like authentic and stuff. That's me and Skye. So we started, like I said, we started training together. We debuted at Pro Wrestling East together. They had their first singles match. Was it tag? They had their first match. I had my first match, basically. And then the story started to develop there. You know, we were always together. We traveled together. We were always kind of there together anyway, being the goofy little duo that we are. So I can't remember who it was, but I think it was when I had the Nightshade match and they had another match, and we were like, should we go out and support each other? Like, should that be a thing that we are, you know, because especially because, like I said, at the time I was wrestling Nightshade, who had turned on them, so they were going to come out and I was going to come out for them. We switched jackets. I think they wore my jacket and I wore theirs. And it just, we hugged in the ring, and the crowd were like, yes, that is what we are looking for. And we were like, oh, and then we got a friendship chant, and it was like, there it is. It's happened. And it wasn't, you know, we didn't shove it in people's faces. We kind of literally just came out and supported each other. And then, like I said, when we hugged, it was like friendship. That is the thing that we have to offer as a pair. You know, it was Fight and Flight is basically our two ways of dealing with anxiety. I know Skye's very vocal about their mental health struggles, and I'm quite vocal about mine as well. A lot of people don't think that people that are chatty and extroverted can be anxious, because you know, anxiety prevents in really different ways for different people. And we were talking about, you know, kind of how our anxiety prevent is, and everyone knows about the fight and flight response. And I was like, I get really angry and want to fight everyone, and they want to run away. You know, that's how our anxiety prevents. And we were like, aha, fight and flight. And then we were like, oh my God, that's it. That's the tag. So yeah, it kind of just naturally came out of our friendship, out of our struggle with our mental health, respectively. And it formed in front of the fans of Pro Wrestling East's eyes, which was really nice. It was a very natural kind of thing. I remember speaking to Tom Dawkins, who is Cara Noir, about it, and he was like, there are some tag teams that just naturally happen and people gravitate and onto. You know what I mean? Like you as a wrestler, the reaction that you're getting from an audience tells you a lot about your performance and what is working and what isn't. And like I said, that one hug that just like got a friendship chant, we were like, it's here. This is something. So yeah, I think also Ian, who runs Pro Wrestling East, and Tom, who runs Pro Wrestling East, they saw it and were like, that's a thing. That's a tag now. So then we had our first tag match only last year, and it went, yeah, like I said, we came out, hugged, high-fived, and that was it. It was just like, this works. And it was weird because like I'm not boasting at all, but it wasn't really hard work. It was kind of just like, it happened so naturally and so organically that we didn't really have to do much. Like, it was like, hello, we are friends. We're genuinely, legitimately friends, and we're here for each other, and we have a hug. And then it was like, yeah, it's friendship. And that was it. The friendship was born. I'm sure Skye's is a lot more nicer and complimentary of me, because they always don't put themselves over. But they are an integral part of this. It is a tag team. We are a duo. Without me, there is no Skye, and without Skye, there is no Beau. Like, you know, we complement each other so well that this wouldn't work without the other. And I think our characters have definitely changed and been influenced by each other as well, which is really nice. I think Beau has got Skye to be more vocal and stand up for themselves and be a little bit more feisty. And I think Skye has managed to find a softer side of Beau as well. I think when I first started performing, I thought, you know, I'm an edgy punk, that's all I'm going to be, kind of thing. But I think who was it? I can't remember. Someone said that me and Skye together are like Saturday morning TV presenters. We're both just such little goofballs. It was my partner, actually. He was like, yeah, you're just such goofballs. I was like, yeah. And I think that's why it's worked, because we are genuine, we are fun, we are friends having fun together and supporting each other. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. You know, everyone has a best friend. So it's like, look at these best friends. They're having the time of their lives.
I tell you what, presenters now, I'm just seeing it, you guys on like commentary or something, or like recap shows or something like that, as little presenters with little desks, as little papers.
I know, the little pages, like we could have little, although Skye already wears a bow tie, so I just need one. But yeah, it's I think, like I said, it happened so naturally, and it happened really without, you know, the momentum of it really took over. We wrestled at Pro Wrestling East at the weekend, and you know, as our music hit, which is both of our entrance musics mushed together, which is amazing. Like, Pro Wrestling East have done an incredible job of supporting us with it, and people's reaction to it immediately, just, you know, all the nerves that you have before you go out are just, you know, we're both like, oh, I've forgotten, I don't know what I'm doing. And then as soon as our music hit and people started cheering, we both just looked at each other and smiled, and we're like, yeah, this is fucking cool.
Oh, you love to see it. Now, I must propose something to you as well, Beau, because when I had Skye on, I mentioned to them, asked this question, I was like, if they can imagine the dream tag titles over their shoulder for Fight or Flight, I believe, if my mind corrects me, because sadly in my old age this noggin's going, the tag titles they said were the Pro Wrestling East tag titles. I want to know, do you agree, or is there another tag titles that you think would look very, very well over Fight or Flight?
See, Skye's humble, whereas I'm a big head, so I'm like, every tag title would look good on us. But I do agree that East would probably be the most satisfying, because we were born there basically as a tag team. You know, that's what, like I said, Pro Wrestling East have been so supportive of us, you know, from behind the scenes. Like, the locker room's always amazing, always banging. Everyone's so nice and supportive. You know, Ian and Tom, who run it, have been incredibly supportive of us and given us real opportunities. And, you know, the fans as well. You know, you're nothing as a wrestler without fans. You know, that's who you're performing to. And they have been with us literally since the beginning. You know, they've supported us from day one. They were the ones that have basically given us the opportunity, because they picked up on something in us that we didn't necessarily see. You know, I say it was easy because of the reaction that they gave us. You know, they reacted to something in us that really helped us. So I think Pro Wrestling East definitely would be number one, because it's, like I said, even though they're in Cambridge, they're our home promotion, and I think being a tag team that grew in East, we're the kind of East tag team now, would be amazing. But obviously every other tag titles as well, there's some pretty ones out there. I wouldn't say no to any of them. I think, Skye always has not trouble, but is because they are non-binary, they're like, where do they fit in, terms of gendered belts? But there are a lot of companies that are working with intergender tags that, and they're putting belts on intergender tags, which I think is really cool for someone like Skye, who is non-binary and doesn't fit a gendered belt. They always are like, they're like, oh, I can't go for a men's belt, I can't go for a women's belt. And I'm like, you should be able to go for either, I think. But I think, yeah, like I said, there's a lot more companies now that are putting the belts on intergender tags, which is great. And it means there's some targets for us to hit, some sites for us to get. There's UBW, they've got the Odyssey as their tag team champions at the moment. Artemis Adonis, who we beat on Saturday, by the way, just putting that out there. And they are also the United tag team champions at the moment. So just putting it out there, could happen.
Are we seeing an all belts on the line situation? Oh boy, that's going to be an interesting situation. Just saying. But obviously, as well, I believe you're going to be facing Sunshine Machine soon as well in East, if I'm correct.
Yes, I don't think either of us have kind of let it settle in yet that that's going to happen. I think we won't believe it until we're literally standing across the ring from them. Yeah, I think we got asked recently. We're like, who do you want to face as a tag? And Sunshine Machine are one of the best tag teams in this country, if not the world. They are incredible. They are so good at what they do. They like literally live and breathe tag team wrestling. And we're really honored to be able to have that match with them. We've trained a little bit with TK and Mambo. I actually did gymnastics with them years ago because Play Fight also does gymnastics sessions, and I've done that with them. It's really good for wrestling. So being a little fan and being like, oh, I'm doing gymnastics with TK and Mambo, to sit standing across the ring from them as a tag team is amazing. They're also like the best eggs and just very, very kind, lovely people. And yeah, I'm just super excited every time I see like on their socials, like they've posted something else, like these incredible creative tag spots that are just like mind-blowing. And I'm like, I can't wait to like get in the ring with them and pick their brains and learn a load of stuff and take some crazy moves. And the opportunity to wrestle them's huge. And we know it is, like I said, they're in demand. They are literally everywhere, which as they should be. So yeah, we feel very lucky and fortunate that they're coming to East, but it's our home turf, so I think we're going to be okay.
Well, hey, you got to step up and fight or flight this situation, I think. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Now, obviously, here in the UK, we've been quite explosive with our scene as well. But obviously, the big wigs have came over as well. WWE, Clash the Castle, Money in the Bank. But obviously, there was AEW with Wembley and All In. And obviously, there was only two enemies of that whole weekend, and it was Ticketmaster and the beer prices, the worst enemies.
Yeah.
I remember when I, came down there and just seeing like obviously like the UK and just seeing so many wrestling fans out there with like merch across the streets and just filling up the old tube and everything. I want to know from yourself, but what does it mean to you be like a UK wrestler and just see that influx of wrestling fans?
I mean, it's exciting, I think, as a wrestler, if you have those big shows. Like I went up to Clash at the Castle as well because I've got a friend in Cardiff, and we went to AEW as well. And it's just exciting. I think it's exciting knowing that many people love wrestling, because I feel like it's such a niche in your everyday life. Like when I go to my shoot job and I'm like, and they're like, what'd you do at the weekend? I'm like, oh, I wrestled in front of 200 people. And they're like, what does that even mean? What does that look like? They don't really comprehend like what wrestling is, and B, how many people like it. So I think, when we went to AEW, and like you say, you get the tubes full of like different t-shirts and stuff, and like everyone just like chanting and singing, and just like, it's finding your people on such an epic level. Like I said, when I was a kid growing up watching WWE, it was only boys that watched wrestling. I didn't have any other friends who were girls when I was younger who watched wrestling. and liked it as much as I did. And I think there's something about how the community has grown and shifted as well. There's a lot more female fans. There's a lot more LGBTQ plus fans. There's a lot more people of color. It's a lot more diverse now than it was when I was younger. And I think that was really lovely to see and celebrate as well. You know, being in a group, I had drinks beforehand with other wrestlers, and, you know, being in a group where there's girls and there's just everyone is different is really nice as well. So I think that kind of, you know, there's still a long way to go, don't get me wrong, but I think, you know, the growth in diversity in my kind of, you know, 20 odd years of watching wrestling was really nice. Oh god, it's more than 20, 30 years. But yeah, it was really cool. And I think, like I said, it's just exciting. You know, someone at work, they were like, "Oh, I saw that poster for the wrestling you're going to." They were like, "Are you on the show?" And I was like, "Oh, bless your little heart." Like, absolutely not. I'm nowhere near that. But it was just really sweet. But yeah, I think it's just exciting to know that many fans are about, that there's that many people that still love wrestling. I think, you know, wrestling online can be quite a toxic place as well. And I think to find that joy together in watching wrestling was an experience. And, you know, to be that, how big was that, the AEW show? It was like 90,000 or something.
The numbers are all over the place.
Yeah, well, you know, it's the biggest wrestling show I've ever been in. I've never been to a WrestleMania or anything. So that was the biggest wrestling show I've ever been in. And it was like, the energy of that was incredible, even though the beers were £10. And, you know, I had not very good seats as well, because I was like, don't have that much money. But it was still such a fun, amazing experience. Getting out of Wembley, however, was bullshit. Trying to get home, it took hours. It was so annoying. That's the only thing about Wembley, is like everyone obviously is leaving at the same time. No one lives or stays in Wembley. So yeah, it took ages to get back to East London. I
was lucky. I heard the hotel was like 20 minutes away, so I was quite lucky.
Sick. Clever. Yeah, clever. We didn't think about that. And like, obviously, because I was drunk at the end of it. So I went wandering around trying to find friends, ended up in a pub like 15-minute walk away, which was horrible. And was like, oh, why am I here? This is gross. Left, and then was like, tried to get on the train, and it was the last train. So couldn't get on it. And then because we'd left all of our stuff, we had a friend who lives in Kilburn. So we'd left all our stuff there. So we had to get a night bus back to Kilburn, and then get the Jubilee line from Kilburn back to, no, it wasn't the Jubilee, because I think I got a cab back. And it took about 2 hours anyway to get back, because I live in East London. It's not just a gimmick. I do actually live in East London. It took hours. But that did not overshadow, like I said, I think sharing joy with people who also share joy in the thing that you love is a really like core thing to human beings. I think that social connection of everyone just having like the best time together is really, really cool. And it's awesome that we get to do that with wrestling.
Hey, absolutely, indeed. And that all-in match, I mean, I was at WrestleMania 39 this year, and while that was great, I mean, even though there were people raging when Cody lost and they were trying to rip the chairs out the seats because
really
Americans, it's Americans.
Yeah. What can you do with them?
I don't know. Obviously, All In itself was a great show. You know, you had matches like FTR and the Bucks, you know, Smojo and CM Punk.
Yeah.
Obviously, but the women, there was only one women's match, but I feel like they still knocked out the park. Rhia, Hikaru Shida, Toni Storm, who am I forgetting? It's terrible of me. It was a 4-way match.
I forgot there was a women's match there. I think that's the one complaint I do have about AEW is they have 2 women's titles. Like, no, 3. Don't they have 3? Because I have the Ring of Honor one as well.
It's 2. Well, Ring of Honor, yes, technically classify that.
They could have had it on there. They had the tag. The thing that really, as a wrestler, the thing that really annoyed me about it was they got MJF to do double duty, but they couldn't have another women's match. And I'm like, if that was on a Brit Res show, everyone would be like, oh my god, book another women's match. But I think if WWE are doing better than you on women's matches, then maybe you need to have a little look at what's going on there.
It's a shame as well, because they've got so many great women wrestlers as well. You know, like I mentioned, you know, Shida, Britt Baker, Toni Storm.
They've got some of the best women's wrestlers in the world. They've got Mercedes Martinez, and what are they doing?
And even Athena, I think, is exceptional.
Yeah, Athena. They've got Emi Sakura. Like, that locker room is stacked full of female talent, and it feels like they don't always give them the time and opportunity that they deserve, which is hard. I think, yeah, like obviously WWE's done better in the past kind of, since the women's revolution. I think they realized, they were like, actually, women want to spend money on wrestling. Women can. I think Rhea Ripley at the moment is the 5th best seller for merch in WWE. They're not dumb anymore. They're finally like cottoning on, like, oh, women like wrestling too, or non-binary. There's a spectrum of people who want to, have wrestling, especially like, Bianca Belair has been incredible as well. So I think, yeah, it would be good if AEW could just put some more women's matches on. They've got a bunch of talent, give them some stories. Toni Storm is doing such incredible character work at the moment. Like, I absolutely adore what she's doing. She's always been an amazing wrestler. When I was getting back into wrestling, like, watching a lot more independent in like 2014 or 15, I remember like Googling like women's wrestlers that are kind of up and coming and stuff, or like were kind of more established on independence. And she was there, Nixon Newell was there, there was people who were incredible wrestlers. But yeah, I think she's doing an amazing job. Like, and I don't, I'm not like put the title on her now, but just develop more out of it. I know they're like working with her, but they've also got a ton of other women in that locker room that could do similar, So
Absolutely. I mean, it's a shame as well. I mean, I've always been like, if I was Tony Khan in charge, I feel like you could take Rampage and just make it an hour of women's wrestling only, a female-centric show, and that would be so beneficial. Do you think that would be a very good move for the company and just like a way for the future?
I think so. There's always the argument of kind of, should women be that separate from wrestling? Everyone wrestles the same. Everyone takes the same bumps. Like, I'm a massive fan of intergender wrestling. It's hard because we don't say it's the men's division or this is a men's match and then it's like the women's division, it's the women's match. I want them to be more integrated on the show that they're on. I think they don't necessarily. I think their own show would be amazing because it would get to showcase the women that are there. But I don't necessarily know if that's kind of the direction I would like it to go in. I just, out of the 3 hours of wrestling that you have on TV, just give women half of it. It's not that hard, just give women the same, when you're talking about equality and equity and stuff like that, you're giving people the same thing. Well, that, in terms of wrestling time and in stories, just give women the same time and care that the men get, I think that's what it boils down to for me. I don't know. I don't want it to be tokenistic. You know what I mean? I don't want them to be like, well, the women have got their own show now, equality solved. I just, I want them to give them the time and care that the men get. I think that's it. Like I said, I love intergender wrestling. I wrestle intergender quite regularly. So I think just do it. It's wrestling.
Everyone's a wrestler. At the end of the day, you're wrestlers are wrestlers. There's nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll all have the fun at the same time as well. But obviously, WWE have been having our little eye on the UK as well, because John Cena, the big man himself, Mr. You Can't See Me with the Handshake, was like, hey, WrestleMania in the UK, that could be something in the future. Now, look, I'm biased. I just want it in Scotland so I don't have to travel 8 hours by train. I'm a simple man with needs. I just want that. I don't want to travel. I hate the train. It's a pain. They have the strikes. They have all this poo. They don't sell alcohol sometimes on the train, and I'm very thirsty. But I want to know for yourself, Beau, it's the stadiums. Stadiums are beautiful here in the UK. If you could pick the ideal stadium for WrestleMania in the UK, which one would you want it to be in?
I'm definitely 100% going to say the London Stadium because it's 20 minutes from my house.
Respect it.
Like you say, you're a simple man with simple needs. Me too. I don't want to spend 2.5 hours getting home from Wembley. I want to get out of I want to walk home. You know what I mean? I think, I don't know, because we were talking about this obviously after AEW. It's like, because WWE are petty, would they run it at Wembley because AEW have done it? You know what I mean? So I know, because the London Stadium is also the West Ham Stadium, and I know that Triple H is a West Ham fan. So I think it will probably be there. I really liked the one that Clash at the Castle was at.
Wow, the Principality.
Yes, yeah. Really enjoyed that as well. I haven't been to that many stadiums around the UK, to be honest. I think wherever it was, though, like, obviously I am biased. I live in London, so I would want it to be in London. But I think if it was anywhere else in the country, in the UK, I would travel to it, easily. Like, because it's a WrestleMania, you know what I mean? Like, been the dream since I was a child. I think we were supposed to go to Wrestlemania, the COVID Wrestlemania, basically, that got cancelled in March 2020. We had everything booked. We were supposed to go, and it was in Florida. So I would have met loads of people. I was going out there, and me and my friends that were going out there were going to meet up with Rhia, and we were going to I would have met loads of people and stuff. So I felt like I was was really sad when that didn't happen. So I think if it does come here, it definitely, wherever it is, I'll go. I unfortunately for you think it will be London, just because of the infrastructure of people getting to London is probably easier than maybe other places. Maybe I'm sorry, I'm being incredibly London centric, but I regret nothing.
And the Scottish pull out the white flag of defeat again.
I would happily go to Scotland. My mum's from Scotland, so I've got heritage, I've got roots there. So I'd happily go up the Scots. But I think
that's great to see. But I feel like the Americans flying over will see our weather and have a panic attack because they don't want to deal with the rain and the sleet and the snow. And our pint prices are pretty decent, so they can drink to forget, as the old
Americans can't drink anyway, so they'd be like, one beer, oh my god, I'm drunk.
No, the lightweights are coming. But you never know. But obviously, WrestleMania in the UK, I feel like they got to showcase some UK talent as well. I mean, obviously, the big man Drew himself and so many others like Nikki Cross, and obviously there's Gallus as well in NXT. So I want to know for yourself, but if you could think of some UK indie wrestlers that you would love to see showcased on a stage like WrestleMania, who would you like to see showcased on that?
Ooh, I'm going to be biased and say Rhia O'Reilly, just because I love her and she's an icon, but she deserves it. Who else? Alex Windsor. I know she's been working Impact, but she is an incredible talent. So I'd love to see her up there. Kanji. I'm going to say mostly women because I'm biased because I love women. Kanji, definitely. Obviously, Sunshine Machine we mentioned as well. I'm just thinking tags. Greedy Souls as well. Brendan and Danny from Wales. Who else? I always feel bad at this kind of bit because I feel like anyone I leave out, they're going to be like, that fucking bitch. Why did you say me? Who else am I thinking of? Obviously, I know he's injured at the moment, but Cara Noir, he's my trainer and amazing person. Michael Oku, would love to see up there as well. He'd be fantastic. Spike Trevay as well. He's doing a lot of incredible work at the moment. He always has been, but just at the moment he's got this extra level of violence that I really love. So he'd be great. I'm trying to think of people not just be so South centric. I'm like, who's from the North that I love also? Like trying to think of everyone. I just think, there's a lot of incredible wrestlers in the UK. I think, BritRes as a whole has some incredible talent, and that's just keeping on coming. So I think everyone. Also, I think anyone. I'm going to be really diplomatic and be like anyone that wants to, because WWE is not for everyone. There's people that have kind of made the choice if they want to be go to that kind of place or not. So if you listening and you're a wrestler, if you want to be on WWE, you go you, and if you don't, also thumbs up. It's the most diplomatic I've ever been in my life.
You'll be running for your local government soon enough.
I know, right? I could do a better job.
I would have absolutely no doubt you could with our current. Hey, look, this is a wrestling show. This is a wrestling interview show. There's no political right here. Let's put that back into the chest as well. But obviously, our whole, obviously, there's not just England. There's Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales. I don't know about going to maybe other parts of the UK. Is that sort of your plan for next year?
But in terms of wrestling, me go out and perform. Oh god, yeah. Like I end up wrestling in the Southeast, especially as someone that's newer to the scene. It comes to budget, I think, for people a lot of the time. Not everyone can book everyone, and not everyone can book everyone from everywhere, which is absolutely fine. It's wrestling is a business at the end of the day. So I try not to take it too personally, but I would love to wrestle anywhere and everywhere. There's incredible promotions across the UK. I'd love to go over to Ireland. I'd love to go represent in Scotland, even though I'm from the East. I'm still like I said, part Scottish, so I'd love to go wrestle up there. I train at New Wave in Wales sometimes as well, so I'd love to wrestle there. I just anywhere and everywhere. I think, you know, wrestling, we're lucky now that there are so many promotions across, you know, so many countries. So we're very, very lucky. So yeah, I think, you know, some goals for next year. I'd love to wrestle in another country because I haven't yet. So I think that's a big goal. There's a lot of European women's kind of promotions at the moment as well that I'm kind of thinking about. It's that like knowing yourself and knowing whether you're ready for that kind of next step. I think that's something that my trainers and Rhia specifically have been so helpful with me specifically in my career as well, of being like, what do you want? You know, you don't look at anyone else. Don't look at what everyone else is doing. What do you want to do? And how do you get there? Like, what are your steps to take? So it's a very kind of realistic, helpful way of looking at wrestling to try not to get too bogged down by it. Because, you know, we're human beings. We compare ourselves to other people. But, you know, you kind of have to look at your journey and where you're going with it. So, yeah, I'd love to wrestle in other countries. That's definitely one of my goals for next year, is wrestle somewhere that's not England or Cambridge or the Southeast, because that's where I always make a joke that I'm Kent's favourite wrestler at the moment.
Well, who knows? Maybe the Beau Bells Grand Tour will be coming very, very
exactly.
soon.
I'm going to make one of those little things, you know, like Man Like Doris does when he has like his like tour dates. That's my goal, to have a cool one like that, like he does. Because they always remind me of like, you know, like gigs, you know, like when you see a band has gone on tour and they have all the dates and stuff. I love that. So that's my goal, have a cool date graphic like Man Like Doris does.
Well, then you can make some merch as well, some tour t-shirts as well, get on the Big Cartel store and people can be buying merch. So never know. But Beau, obviously we're coming to the end of our time here on the Soul Sessions, but I want to propose one final question, maybe a bit on a philosophical side. Let's say next year, you know, AEW All-Ins came back, and obviously you, Firefly, you got tag belts, you've got gold all over. And let's say you meet an American wrestler, they came over for the show, and they ask you, you know, the UK wrestling scene, you know, why should I come over and wrestle here? What would it mean to me as an American wrestler to come and wrestle for the UK scene? I want to know your opinion on that.
Oh God, that's heavy load. I mean, some of the most talented people in the world are in the UK, and I think we could wholeheartedly show that as well. I think, you know, some of, you know, we're talking about people that could be at, you know, AEW, WWE kind of level. Like, some of the talent that we have is incomparable across the rest of the world. Don't get me wrong, there are incredible wrestlers everywhere, but I think there's something about British wrestling and its heritage and its spirit that is different to every style of wrestling. And, you know, you get that in Japan, you get that in the US, you get it in North America, you get it in Europe and in different parts. But I think there's something, the prestige of British wrestling and, you know, the heritage that it has and the kind of support that people have for it with here as well is like the British wrestling fans as well are some of the best fans in the world too. And I think, you know, getting to perform alongside some of the best wrestlers in front of some of the most supportive fans is like, must be an experience for someone. And I think also British wrestling fan chants
Yes.
Iconic, and you will only ever get that here. You know, and I think that's another one for lols. I got really deep there, and then I was like, you know, having a cheeky slant on that. If you want to have a really stupid wrestling chant at you, come and wrestle in front of British fans, because I love some of the stuff that people come up with. It's very creative. Like, I love it. But I don't think you get that in the US as much.
No, they're not very creative as well. I mean, I remember All In here in the Cash has got a gun chant, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
We go in there. We go in there, folks. Okay.
We go in there, yeah. They will. Whoa. Yeah, it was hilarious. I think there's on TikTok there's this like trend of like American chants at football games and then like British chants at football games, and the American chants are like, we will win, we know that we can win, and then British chants are like, the referee's a nonce, like they're just so ridiculous. So I think, yeah, for American wrestlers, come and wrestle in front of British fans and enjoy what you get.
Well, you've heard it first, Americanos. Come over here, you'll enjoy yourself. You might get a bit of a slagging in the end result.
Yeah.
Watch as you get. But Beau, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here on the Soul Sessions. But obviously, what I like to do as well, if people have heard and they want to see you wrestle in person, what kind of dates have you got lined up for the rest of the year and maybe in the future?
I've only got 2 shows booked in for the rest of the year. I'm wrestling on Sunday for Dropkicks in London, but it's sold out. And then the 30th of November, Fist Club. We haven't talked about Fist Club. It's a queer-led wrestling promotion that runs out of Bethnal Green Working Man's Club. This is one of my variants actually on show at Fist Club. So it's at Bethnal Green Working Man's Club on the 30th of November. So there's a faction called the Brenda Agenda, and they are basically right to censor. They are very professional. There is no fisting, no fun. Led by Rhia O'Reilly, who plays one of her variants, Brenda, and I actually play her little simpering sidekick called Linda. It sounds wild now I'm saying it. So we are having an office Christmas party on the 30th of November, and the Brenda Agenda are taking over, and we're promising no fun. That is no fun. So that's my next day. I haven't got anything booked in for December. I think I might take it off because I've had some knee injuries. I've had just knee stuff in the last couple of months that hasn't been great. So I think having a month off and then getting back to it in January would be, probably sensible. But if I do get any bookings, I will take them also because I'm a stupid wrestler. But then we will be leading into, if you do want to come and see that Sunshine Machine match at Pro Wrestling East, that'll be Saturday, February the 11th in Cambridge. Pro Wrestling East have amazing cards. Like the Saturday was stacked. Like I said, some of the best British talent in the country. So if you do want to see Fight and Flight versus Sunshine Machine, February 11th next year.
Hey, fair dues indeed. And now, folks, I know in this modern day and age, people are lazy. You won't write a 8,000 word essay. You'll just find an AI to do it for you on the line. You won't cook a meal because you'll just get delivery to deliver you in $2.50 delivery charge, which is absolutely ruthless. So I know we're all lazy. So I'm going to put Beau's Instagram link up in the description of this video. You can click on that, follow her journey, see the matches coming up, and just see what's going on in the world of fight or flight. Well, Beau, thank you again for appearing here on the Soul Sessions. I would say the whole YouTuber stick, but YouTube's been around since 2005. I am not going to be that kind of person. You know what to do. But thank you, everyone. And again, tuning in for another episode of the